Welcome to your moment. All right. So the question. Oh, sorry.
So, what was this? So it says
Kevata.
in Digha Nikaya, Buddha talks about how human beings came to exist and how they took their physical form. So in that story, it's energetic beings slowly coming down the levels and becoming physical. And so the jhana is basically of letting go of those resistance, the stuff that we accumulated, and then sort of going back to your energetic levels. That's how you can put it. All the resistance. It's a nice sutta if you can read.
Yeah, I read it. When I first read it, I thought, okay, first of all, this is the first cosmology. In Buddhism, we don't have cosmologies. They appeared much later after the Buddha died, 500 much later, where all these realms of existence and things like that was kind of later. But this is the only teaching of the Buddha where, and for me, he was talking about clinging. It's a story about how we cling to heavier and heavier things, and how we feed off of things, not just we feed off of thoughts, we feed off of emotions, we feed off, and things can get heavier and heavier, and we become what we eat. And so the Buddha used food as a metaphor for right view as well. I mean, we can, once we know that we're feeding off of refined things and heavy things, and we can see how they're affecting us, we can start to choose. We can see, what do I want to feed off of? And so one analogy the Buddha gave in the Fortress Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya number 11, the Fortress Sutta, is the Buddha compares the whole meditation practice to being in a fortress. And mindfulness, remember, is the gatekeeper. So that's the one that shows who's coming in. Name yourself. I'm greed. All right. Guess you have to come in today. But anger. You're just noticing who's coming in and who's going out. And then jhanas were health food. And so, it was like the first jhana was like, lentils and, a coarser rice or something like that. And then things got, and each jhana was just more and more refined food. And so it's not that we just stop eating right away, like, and when we see the danger and suffering and the danger in living life, no, we start eating more and more refined foods. And we see that we become more and more refined, and we start valuing refinement in the practice and in life, and we see that we're becoming more refined, and wisdom starts flowing a lot faster at that rate when we become more refined, and the two start merging, and we see the importance of that refinement of jhana and the refinement of insight, and we start building a really powerful practice at that point and becoming, like you said, a more energetic, fully energetic human being, more gathered human being.
And to get the right understanding of the jhanas, since Robert mentioned there's a range of it. If you develop it properly, you should be functioning it in those states, like walking, sleeping, talking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that view, you won't get into that wrong view of jhanas is a very concentrated, small, narrow thing. It's actually a state where you do not have certain kind of mental activities, which is unwanted. So if you start letting go of them step by step, automatically you rise up to who you are. And then the thing is, the journey is possible for everybody. Why I remembered that story was, so the energetic beings, they fell down and they started accumulating and they became chorus slowly throughout the story. I can't remember the full complete story, but so just like that, in each jhana, we let go of certain kinds of things that we have been carrying all our life, and letting that weight go, you feel that relief, and you feel that lightness or that energy. So everybody should be able to do it, therefore. And it's not gaining something here. If you think it as it's something that you have to let go, everybody, once they start letting go, there are layers of resistance to each level. Everybody rises up.
And it's really about hunger, because those energetic beings, those have started experiencing hunger for the food of the earthly, of the heavier realm. And that's very significant, because the word tanha, which is what? The cause of suffering, for the Buddha, means hunger and thirst. And so they started experiencing hunger. And then what happens when you experience hunger? You start feeding. And the word upadana, or clinging, we translate it, means feeding in the Buddha's language. He didn't choose these words lightly. He was talking about a very real sense. We start craving out of a hungry sense that I'm not full. It's this, what's underlying craving is I'm not full. I need something on the outside to fill up, that I don't have it. I'm not enough. There's a whisper of I'm not enough that we have to overcome to get to jhana, to start living a life of fullness. We need to question that view. Are we always in a state of not even seeing hunger? It's not that you're not going to eat lunch with me, but and not experience hunger, but it's an attitude towards hunger. It's an attitude towards eating, and it's understanding it in its suffering potential, and how it creates, we become what we eat, literally. And we also become the views that we're not aware of, that we have towards hunger and feeding. Yeah.
In the story, the beings initially started eating it, and then initially they just ate what they wanted. And after a while, some thought, oh, why don't we save up some at home and just pile it up and eat it? So it's easier for us. So some beings started piling it up, and then they started harvesting. When they started gathering, they had fights, some were stealing. So just like that, the more you started gathering, the downfall was more. And it's an interesting story that everybody should read.
In the Digha Nikaya, I can find one upstairs in the library and bring it down and open it up. What's that? I think it's 26, but Chamal might have a better memory for numbers. It's towards the end.
I can find it and put it on the WhatsApp group.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And also something you
I just want to now come back to something I said. I don't remember when I said it, whether it was in the Dhamma talk or the guided meditation, but I was trying to get them to feel the difference between the Rupa Loka and the Kaya Loka, the world of the body, which is the heavy world of greed, of accumulating food stuff, and fighting and things like that, and the Rupa Loka, which is the moment before you start feeding. It's that energetic feeling of fullness in its ultimate sense, that there's no division, there's no need to feed on external things. It's sort of separation. There's no need to locate yourself as an empty, lacking being that's not enough, and then putting yourself. So we create our relationship to our body, and it's that bodily relationship that becomes heavy and creates division and strife and warfare and problems. And so the jhana practice is, like you were saying, is backing up into that energetic body again of oneness and fullness, and non-feeding and non-clinging.
And then some are naturally, with their upbringing, with their environment, they are sort of open for the energetic body from growing up. And some, because of their culture, because of the upbringing, they're not that open for that energy body. And for them, it might be a bit difficult first to sort of get into that practice. But I think that's where.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Let's marinate in that insight for a moment.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up, because I want to ask you, what is your culture? Like, what views are you bringing? I found, for example, I've loved the monastic practice in Southeast Asia because I've found, especially in Thailand, people are just so open and sweet about their pleasures, and they just don't have any guilt about enjoying a banana or something like that. And it's a lovely practice that complements well with the jhana practice, because I find a lot of Westerners bring a lot of guilt into their pleasures and heaviness. And so even before, there's lightness, and a banana can taste like a flower. It's just so refined, and yet people can feel guilty that they're fattening themselves up, and they'll complain about it and go into negativity. And culture does matter. I think that's a brilliant point. And so I want to ask you, what is your culture? What are you bringing to the jhana practice? What is holding you back from really feeling just the non-limits, the ceiling of your joy? There is a view inside of you that is probably holding you back, because I had to work through a lot of my views and a lot of my puritanical views about pleasure to be able to feel that upper limit.
Even starting from the very basic, I think what you were saying earlier about, I wouldn't call it aggressive energy. It's more like not anger,
Yeah.
more aggressive. It's the better term is male energy and the female energy. So sometimes people have a balance. Sometimes people have tendencies to lean to one side. So in the practice, what should happen automatically, it's a mingling of both energies. And yeah, you have to be honest with yourself and know which tendencies that you are leaning towards. If you are male, if your energy is more male oriented, you might need a little bit of feminine energy too, which is like in the practice sense, if you are strict and schedule and you are meditating every day for 1-2 hours, so that's a little bit of masculine energy. So somebody like that might need a little bit of actually more metta practice, and it helps him to balance it off to the middle point. And if you are starting from the feminine side, you have to be honest again with yourself and see, are you letting that energy predominate, or you need both? So a best example is sometimes the male dominated energy type, they like to do it strictly, and because of that they lack the metta side, and they don't relax in the meditation. Just letting go is a bit tough for them. And from the other side, sometimes they have already let go on so much, they're sort of floating all the time. So they need a little bit of structure. So you have to be honest with yourself and decide how to balance your energy. And then finally, once you're at the third jhana, from their point, it's I would say it's a neutral energy.
It becomes more and more balanced. Samadhi adana. Adana means to balance, like even balance the scales, some evenly. So we're trying to find that balance. And sometimes we don't know which one we are, because we haven't really looked into that. I didn't know how feminine my energy was until I went to these really masculine, hardcore monasteries in Thailand, where they're always talking. The Buddha used a lot of warfare images to describe the jhanas and very masculine energy, and they only taught from that warfare point of view. And my energies had become so soft and feminine and surrendered at a certain point in my practice. It was a nice balance to sort of rebalance me. I just took and chose from what I wanted, but you know, and then I think sometimes you don't know until you put yourself into a certain milieu or a certain culture. And I would encourage you all to take these different retreats. I found John Jeff, I lived Wat Meta for a long time in San Diego, and this is one of his. He has a couple Jhana books, but anyway, um, it's a very masculine type practice, but it's also quite balanced in many respects, and but a little heavier, maybe a little heavier on the masculine side. I got kind of part of his healing team and energy team because he's really into energetics and the whole that whole school as well. And one of his students, Rob Burbea, who wrote Emptiness That Frees, one of the greatest works of Buddhist work that I've ever read in my life. It's absolutely amazing. He approaches the jhana practice as a really he starts off right away naming these energies and pointing you to balancing them. So the point is, why certain things, why not just start off if you know it's leading to balance, try and work with that balance right from the beginning and notice it throughout your day and what you're doing, how heavy of a hand you're putting into something, what's the degree or intensity of your effort, etc. How can I surrender a little bit here, or do I need to show up more with strength and determination? These are very critical tools that we learn to deal with. Rob Burbea balances it, I think, those energies really well. Tani Sarabiko emphasizes the doing aspects. Well, what can I do right now in my meditation? Just not be here and hang out. He's a big critic of non-doing. There is a subtle doing in non-doing, and that's kind of one of the big shticks of Tani Sarabiko, and it comes at it from a masculine side. So I'm just pointing these out to you. I would say, I don't know, Banti G, I don't know how you would describe him, or Lee Brasington as being one side or the other. There are just other jhana
Yeah, you have to find the teacher that resonates with
with
you
you
and
initially.
continue
Hmm.
doing it. But
Hmm.
then throughout the practice, you will find different teachers
Hmm.
that corresponds for your experience in that moment.
Hmm.
And something very important, since we are doing the first jhana, talking about first jhana, I thought worth
Oh, yeah.
mentioning was, so from the culture, from the upbringing, something that is very crucial, I feel like, is we'll be talking about a lot of energy today. So I grew up in a military family. My father was an admiral, and I'm a civil engineer. So energy bodies is, for me, when I started meditating, was quite out there. And I was like, oh, uh, it's not my cup of tea. And what happened though was I was meditating because I wanted good concentration. And because it was helping my studies, I was continuing to do it. And then during the college time when I was meditating, suddenly I started becoming aware of these energies that all these people have been talking about. Like first, if you have never if you have never experienced it, rapture starts like a small centipede just crawling in your back, or some ants moving in your head or in your face. I remember the first time I was just meditating in the library and I was just watching the breath, and I could feel there was some ants running in my back. So I just tried to do that. And then again, the next day it keeps happening. And I'm like, it can't be ants or anything physical. So then I had to sort of accept, okay, it's something in my body that's happening. And then once you accept what's happening and observe what's happening, you start seeing all these energies moving. Like first, it will be like tiny pricks, tiny movements, like spider ants or centipedes moving in your arms and legs. But later on, once you start opening up, you start feeling the full blown energy just moving you even up from the seat. At that point, I couldn't deny that, oh, the energy fact that I've been sort of pushing away, I had to sort of accept it. Like, yeah. So if anybody is in my seat, I just wanted to let you know, you just be open and see what comes out of it.
Yeah. If you're experiencing something weird, it might be PT. It might be joy. Sometimes you can, the point you're meditating on can expand. And so it can be like the whole room. You can suddenly feel like if you're at your upper lip and things are very refined there, suddenly it's like your upper lip's gigantic. You can have these distortions of perceptions that will kind of alter perception. Or you might open up your eyes after meditating and everything will feel brighter. And you'll take that brightness into your meditation. Colors will feel more vivid. Um, and that's a sign of PT. I want to maybe list a few signs of PT and then ask other people what,
Yeah.
as they have questions, whether they experience something weird and whether they think it's PT or not and how to develop it. I thought that would be a good use of our time. Yeah.
The word PT, I've never heard it.
Uh-huh.
How do you spell it?
PITI.
PITI.
And it's untranslatable because it's it's a past tense of the verb to drink. It means drunken. But I'm just loosely using that. Piwati is the verb to drink, and it's a historical past tense. There's a more, at the Buddha's time, there was another past tense, but it's related. And so he uses a lot of water images to describe joy. This feeling of being suffused and saturated. And he gives images. What's the image of the first jhana? Is a skilled bathman. I actually wrote it out because I wanted to read it to you today. Can I read it to you now? And then we'll talk more about signs that PT joy is. We describe it as bliss, rapture, joy. Glee. I've even described it as just upliftment. You just might find an energetic lift that you don't sink from, and you're just that's where the law of gravity and the rupa body. The rupa means the form body, the non-body divisive body, the non-separated body, the energetic body. It will do things that physics doesn't do. You'll suddenly feel lifted and like floating.
That's PT.
That's PT.
So different cultures have different words. So I think like similar words that PT rapture is equivalent to is the chi energy. Chi, some says Kundalini energy, some says
Shakti.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the chakras. It's all connected. So as from Theravada tradition and the background, I stayed away from chakras until I started
You
feeling
couldn't deny
energy
them.
in all points of my chakras. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
because
There's something there, right? They're nodal points, I call them, and just to avoid the word chakra, because people have so many connotations around that, I just call them nodal points for energy sometimes.
and I think a reason for it is you have to develop your awareness to be aware of these subtle energies in your body. So if one does not feel these energies, for them it's not true. So
Yeah.
therefore they won't even believe it. But then if you start developing your awareness, which Jhana would do, it gradually brings up your awareness to a heightened level. You become aware of your own body energy system moving in your body. And then it's so much real for you. And yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Can I read the metaphor the Buddha gives? I think it's better than his already baked cake, because the Buddha really doesn't tell you how to get into the first jhana like we're telling you now. He just told you what it is. I can read you what it is when you're in it fully, but I want you to at least hear how the Buddha describes it, because there's a little bit of work massaging that goes into the first jhana, whereas the other ones have less feeling that you need to work with them. But there's a massaging that goes on that I was describing to in my guided meditation. Once you get a little bit of that PT going, you sort of massage it into the body and comfort and release those contractions and tensions. And so this is how the Buddha puts it. Just as if a skilled bathman or a bathman's apprentice. Okay, so this is a different culture here. So so they used clays and things like that as soap and things that were what do you call that? To bring the oils out of the body for cleansing purposes. And so it would be a dry powder. that a bathman you would go to a public bath and there would be a bathman and everyone would use that. He would make your soap for you and you'd tip him or whatever. I guess if you were in a male bath, you'd be a male bathman. Or apprentice would pour bath water onto a brass basin. Look how precise he is, and knead it together, sprinkling the bath powder again and again with water, so that this ball of bath powder becomes saturated, moisture laden, permeated within and without, would nevertheless not drip. And so it would be massaged so much that it would have water, but no water would, it would not be rejecting water. It would not be, you couldn't squeeze it and water wouldn't come out of it. So even so, a meditator permeates, suffuses, and fills this very body with the rapture, pleasure born of withdrawal. And so the first jhana is born of viveka, of withdrawal, of the 5 hindrances or gross thinking. And so part of the practice of getting into the first jhana is knowing what the 5 hindrances are roughly and being able to spot them and not feed them. Because we often feed our hindrance. I have anger. You create this, you engage with the story about anger. The quick trick for not thinking about the hindrances is connect with the energetic body. Feed the energetic body and just let the hindrance arise, and don't feed it the thought, I am angry, this person did this to me. Just don't feed it with that connection. You don't walk over to it and start feeding it, oh yes, yes, I'm angry, bowing down to it. No, you bow down to the field of the energy and you let the gift of the anger present itself. And one of the biggest gifts for me was, in anger, is always usually strength and courage and determination. Take the gift of the anger and leave the story behind and go back to the energetics of the moment. And you can deal that way with all of them. And so we massage this in, we permeate, suffuse. And so it's just looking for areas where there isn't joy and loving them too, and opening up to them and not closing off and thinking of that, and believing that story of tightness and contraction, but opening up to the space around it, using creative perceptions to drench them in, go into the heart of that hardness or that tension and suffuse it even with lightness and joy. Use your imagination, use your creativity, and empower the whole field to teach that one spot that's rejecting the whole, and just let it become part. See that it's already part of the whole. It's just hiding from the whole picture, the big picture. So there's so many ways of working dimensionally there, outside of the body, inside, dropping any sense of body. You'll find that as you move along, you'll drop a heavy sense of solidity and attachment to the body. So those are the images. Should I read the definition of the first jhana and then we'll ask?
I
Or
think
should avoid it?
I would like to give a modern day example from
Okay.
Thor, and you can reread it. So I think they will understand it more.
Okay.
So what I use to explain the first jhana, since we don't have the soap flakes and the tins, it's like a dough, like a pizza dough. So you take the flour and you add water, and you add the right amount of water, you have the dough. So if you add too much water, the dough would ooze, right? And if you have too less water, the dough would start breaking apart. So in this analogy, what he's saying is you add the right amount of water, so the water is suffused with the entire, the flour. It's not less, it's not more, it's the right amount. So each flour particle in that ball of dough is covered with water at the same time, the right amount. So that ball of dough is the best example I could think of for his simile long days ago.
Mm-hmm. And it is a working it is a working jhana. You do massage that in. You can be in the jhana and be working it at the same time. And so that's why it'll feel unstable. And you'll have these moments of peaks of piti when the hindrances are really far away. And so it can be rougher. It can be very subtle. It can be very high. It can come on suddenly. Suddenly you just appear in a realm of the first jhana and suddenly poof, you're gone from it. And so it is more unstable of all the other jhanas.
How
Yeah.
do you know when you're in the first jhana?
What PT did you feel any PT today or?
Yeah, I mean, I believe I feel a lot of it. I just haven't recognized it
That
the
as
first
just
jhana,
jhana.
you know. I'm thinking, wow, I feel like I've been experiencing these probably for years. I just didn't know what they are, and I don't know how to categorize them.
If it's good to ask the question, but it's also good not to be obsessed about whether I'm in the jhana or not. It's better to just do the work and notice that it's deepening and that work is happening. Is there ever a point where you felt continuous joy for more than 2 or 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so that you're ripe to turn that into, to deepen with that. And how we do that is we just maybe notice an area that's within the field that still feels like a body, like stiff and heavy and tight, and that's not part of that. And we notice the two together, and we allow the PT to sort of, it's almost like a loving kindness practice where you sort of soften around it, and you notice that the edges of the kaya part of the body, the heavy body that's still within a field of lightness. And the more that it's permeated and suffused, the more that sense of that heavy body will sort of break apart. And then you can bring your mind will sort of naturally, when it's free of more and more senses of the body, it'll sort of develop a point of a centeredness where things will start gathering more than in other areas, like a nodal point. And you can use maybe the heart chakra or whatever, the throat, upper lip. There'll be a point where the mind will just gather, and it'll just build. It'll have a very intimate relationship to this PT. And so without tightening around that point, it's a gathering point of all the energies and the experience, and there'll be a sense of centeredness and centering and swirling of energies and loosening at the same time. It won't be a fixed centeredness. And you can really just, at that point, you just want to really let go into the experience, to really completely surrender and soften with it completely. And it will build at that point. The more you relax and surrender to it, it will build into a full jhanic experience. And the trick here is just to surrender and marinate and to enjoy that energetic body and let it give you those gifts there. Do you want to add anything else there?
I would say, yeah, just be aware. I think it's another way of putting it is like you're developing your awareness. You learn to shift your awareness in your body, and you realize when you shift your awareness to your leg, sometimes if the energy that you were building up was sufficient, you suddenly see it moving to the leg. So you're not pushing the energy to any place. You're not doing anything. You're just slightly being aware of parts of your body. And then you would notice with that subtle shift of awareness, that energy also pushes there and moves there. And so
Playing with modes of attention, very big. Yeah,
playing
very
with
big.
the
Just wherever you put your awareness, you'll find joy arising there. And if you're looking at joy a lot in your practice and in your daily life, in that lightness of being, when you put your mind at a point, the joy will gather at the point of attention where your attention is put, and so you can really attain jhana from anywhere where you put your mind.
Can I just offer to reverse that too? If you feel the joy arise, then put your mind on that spot or on that sensation,
Mhm.
and then what's happened, whatever will happen.
And
The
you start
happy-
seeing that your attention is the joy and the joy is the attention, and that the body is PT and you have a PT body, and everything really starts to cohere and connect and gather, and you start seeing, oh, I am that joy. you know it's a kind of fusing of the subject and the object. They start to come together very gradually right there at that point, and the contact point between the subject and the object is PT, is an energetic experience. And how you spread it is very peculiar. You can get really into mechanics. Like, I'm hearing you don't work the energy, whereas I would take a perception like a comb. If I have a really tight angry part of my body that just doesn't want to yield, that's in pain, I will mentally take a comb and comb right through it and see that it's non-solid. And so, but you're saying you just leave it be. And I think that's a good approach too, but just notice the range of tools that you can use. Be creative. Find your way of working with PT. That's my recommendation.
So yeah, I wouldn't say I don't push it. I was just letting them know the techniques of how you can take sort of subtle control over that rapture, but it's not control also at the same time. It's
I
just
see.
moving your awareness,
Well said. Yeah.
and then it moves with it.
Mm.
And then, so if you come to a point where you feel that energy in a certain place of your body to that level, you're already doing good, I would say.
Mhm.
And if you're not, and if it's only a tiny bit, a little bit, I think putting more awareness to it and being more aware of it would slowly let it grow to the point where that energy is now built up. So you can now shift it in your body up and down. And yeah, throughout the years, so I've been experimenting with it. And I realized now when Buddha says one drenches, suffuses, steepens, and yeah, the last one is suffusing. You can do all three.
Yeah, I was just going to say they're all three dimensions that you can work with. They're not synonyms. They're very different types of relationships to the PT and different ways you can work with that.
And you can be creative also. Like certain people are very creative once I tell them the techniques. So I told how I would do it normally. So drenches is like I would normally imagine.
The whole thing surrounding the external part of it, like plunging into it, like taking whatever hardness you feel in your hip or wherever you're feeling the angry tension or contraction, and just letting it plunge and suffuse in this pool of PT around it.
And
yeah,
I would take it is like if you jump into the pool and come out, you're drenching, right? So the rapture can be drenched outwardly in your outside body. And then steepens is like there's an empty flask and you take water and fill it. And the rapture can be moved like that too. You are the empty flask.
Internally.
The rapture energy just moves into your body, into the parts. So I normally choose to start from my pour the water into my head and it just goes like that. But I had a good friend once. I told him that he was doing it by part by part. Like he took his leg, he opened it up, he was pouring rapture in it. He opened his thigh, poured it up. So you can do more creatively.
Yeah, you can use golden light. Some people use like golden light coming in through the crown and suffusing down. For me, it's more of an upliftment, so I feel it coming from the base and lifting up in this direction. But some people feel it coming down. So it doesn't matter. It's how you creatively want to work with it. There's no right answer.
And the very last point where it ends once you have mastered it is suffusing. It's more like when you are doing that, you will actually feel all the cells in your body is
atomic level, even every atom is vibrating it. The way I said in my guided meditation, it's an intimately energetic experience with no center. Like all these we're still working with a half body, half form body, half energetic body. The first two, but the suffused, the last stage is really just noticing the form body 100% and suffusing it with more and more, letting that energy build, and then bringing that full energy body back to the body and sort of allowing that to so and that's where I do the massage work, where I just sort of allow that to even suffuse and enter into the physical body as well, because in the connection between the two. And that's where a lot of healing has happened for me in my life, is when I'm doing that, the work of the first jhana, of really massaging that fullness of PT, because there's a time when it's too soon to start using the PT. You haven't fully drenched, you haven't fully pervaded. What was the vocabulary word you used? Not pervaded. Suffused. No, that's the last one. The second one.
Trench, steepen.
It's steepen. So I say pervade, but it's the same concept. And so you know, there's still a sense of a container, of a me here and a world out there in the first two, but the last stage is to really see that there's no separation, there's no distance, there's just a sort of oneness of energetic presence, and that's when you can really suffuse every atom in the PT energy. And that's when you can really start taking it back to, you know, any other spots that I've missed, and you can start going back and even, you know, releasing some of that tension, and find it's a process where you go even deeper, and you can go into and you can then start working with determinations of entering the first jhana. You can start seeing their stages, their sub jhanas as well. There's a sort of light, that relief from gross thinking. You can just feel so excited and ecstatic to be just free of the gross layer of thinking and just have a refined, sweet thoughts inside of you. You know, you can find these deepening layers, and some people have 1, 2, 3 sub layers in the jhanas, and they get deeper and deeper. And then you can start to program. I have an hour free. I'm going to sit down and enter jhana, contemplate the jhana, and leave the jhana. And you can start developing some mastery in the first jhana before you go into the second jhana.
Any more
Anything
questions?
else?
Is the method that they teach in Vipassana, the Anapanasati, is that the method that one can also get there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the Anapanasati Sutta, Buddha actually says, in a certain section, he says, while he's breathing in, he's aware of the rapture. While he breathes out, he's aware of the rapture. So the breath is on the side now, and your meditation object has become rapture or the piti. And while being aware of the piti, you breathe. So the breath is on the background, foreground, and the piti is in the front. So while breathing, you are aware of the rapture. While breathing out, you are aware of the rapture. And when you do that, what you see is it sort of starts growing in you, growing in your body. So that's how you work the breath and rapture together.
So we start with discriminatory intelligence. The word panya, wisdom, that's translated as wisdom, is actually in Pali, it means discriminatory wisdom. And so we start with the discriminatory wisdom that I'm breathing in, and the discriminatory wisdom that I'm breathing out, and that they're separate. And we start with the discriminatory wisdom that I have some breaths that are really long and some breaths that are really short. I'm discriminating between types of breathing and how do I feel in each of those. There's a certain way of breathing when I'm angry. There's a certain way of breathing when I'm not angry. Can you discriminate between those types of breathings and remember them so that you can, just like a radio tuner, tune into non-anger when anger comes up? And so that's the discriminatory part of our intelligence. But then the Buddha stops that. Those are the first two. There are 14 more. And he doesn't talk about discriminatory intelligence anymore. He talks about a unifying types of intelligence. I am breathing in and I am breathing out. There is a discrimination that I could make there, but I'm not making it. I'm noticing the unifying quality of PT. Normally we notice when we need energy, we breathe in. And when we want less energy, we breathe out. But this is a different type of energy. It's not that discriminatory type of energy where that distinguishes between an in-breath and an out-breath. Like I was describing I was transitioning you in my guided meditation between that second step in the Anapanasati Sutta to the third, where we need a certain discrimination and wisdom that's different. It's a training. We train ourselves to see that energetic piti in the in-breath and in the out-breath, and they each build on each other. It's unifying, and the rest of them are all unifying types of intelligences, because that's really what we're talking about, is waking up a certain sensitivity or intelligence to notice these things that are going on all the time and at deeper layers, and that we just can bring them out, emphasize them, and cultivate them.
Yeah, simply put, it's knowing.
Knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Touching and knowing is when Burmese always says, it's like there's a tangible sense in PT. There's a touching, but it's a mind touching. It's not a finger touching. It's not a grasping or a grabbing or a holding, right? It's the way the mind can only. It's a knowing that's felt deeply in the sensitivity.
And I think that's what Buddha uses in the Anapanasati Sutta too. He doesn't say you watch the breath. He says one knows he's breathing and one knows he's breathing out. One knows it's a long breath, one knows it's a short breath. And then he uses a metaphor to emphasize it. Is like a charioteer when he takes a long turn or a long bend, he knows he takes a long bend. So in the modern term, if you're taking the exit from your road to the highway, where you're taking a long bend, you know you're taking a long bend, even though you're not looking at the bend, you're looking at the road or the breath, but you know you're taking a long bend and a small. So there's a knowing without watching it or looking at it. That's why I said sort of peripheral.
And so the Buddha, when he taught the jhanas, they're a craft. They're a craft of the heart. And so he used crafts to describe the jhanas. If you've ever worked with a craft, worked with your hands, you have to be continually observing what you're doing, because if you put your clay pots in and they all come out of the oven and they're all flat, you then ask yourself, well, what did I do? And then you think back, oh, well, I added too much water today, and the steam and the temperature was too high, so the steam came out too quickly and they all fell. So that's exactly like in jhana. You start off, you got some piti going, then it just flattens out. Well, what happened? You go back just like it. And so the Buddha used crafts like charioteers, and another was a carpenter, for cultivating mindfulness of breathing in the Anapanasati Sutta. Is that you would take a carpenter would have a wheel that they would pump that was metal and sharpened, and you would put wood on it, and you would could mold it and carve some wood out of it. And so when you were pressing too hard or pressing too soft, or intensities, what direction you were leaning into, etc. And so he used a lot of crafts to describe this. And so in many monasteries I've been to, they've emphasized the importance of doing crafts at monasteries. So we would make our own, what do you call them? Brooms out of leaves from the forest and things like that. And you'd have to observe and be patient, not angry at yourself when you would fail, because that was part of the craft you were learning. And so it helps soften your approach to, oh, I'm not getting this jhana thing. It helps you see it's a craft. And I think that's an important analogy that the Buddha was sort of subtly giving there, is just soften the self-judgment there. Look at it as a craft. And failing is really the goal of jhana. I hate to tell you the end, but it really is setting you up. It is a construction, but it's a beautiful construction. And you'll be able to see, it's a fabrication that's less fabricating than the suffering of daily life. And there's more wisdom. And there's nothing to be worried about getting addicted into it either. There's this whole thing on Buddhist Reddit threads about, oh, don't do jhana practice, you'll get addicted. I've never seen a jhanic addict on the street. If they are, they're whole loving beings, and they're giving their heart for the world. There's nothing to be. It can be orgasmic, but it does excite you to come back to your practice, and it's the energy you need to commit to the end of the practice. And everything you're developing here are the subtleties you need to see nibbana, to see and know nibbana. This surrender we're talking about, this slight, how much effort is too much, how much is too less, the effortlessness of the jhanas, everything you're working with here is leading you to recognizing the truth of emptiness.
So
And
yeah,
not self.
even if you have too much pleasure, don't worry. Let yourself enjoy it, because with the jhanas comes wisdom. So while you're enjoying your pleasure, one day you will have sufficient pleasure to suddenly realize, oh, even all these things are not permanent. And you start realizing a lot of impermanence and a lot of things that Buddha was talking about. And then your wisdom might deepen more, and you would be, who knows, suddenly now you want to let go of everything and be free from suffering. Earlier, you might have just been a person who was looking for pleasure. Suddenly now, 180, because you're like, there's too much suffering going on. Enough with the pleasure. Let me now look at how to be free from suffering.
It's the beginning point of that is like people who don't feel full don't give. If people feel like I don't have enough, they don't give. And so this practice is helping you feel full so that you can let go and give the world back to itself instead of trying to see yourself as a consumer of pleasures and experiences, as a taker. In jhana, we become a producer. And it's empowering. It's empowering to feel like a giver in life. It completely turns the table on your whole experiences and allows wisdom, as you said, to blossom. And you start seeing that anicca, dukkha, anatta, that the three characteristics are really just ways of letting the world be as it is. It doesn't last. And
Yeah.
things that don't last are unstable and suffering. And it's a way of seeing that as giving, like, and seeing selfing as a taking, as a consumer, and not as a producer. And that anatta is really the gift back to the world. It's the gift of truth back to the world. And those, you could see the dana practice all the way through. It's letting the world be as it is. And the Buddha describes this, as disenchantment, nibbida, viraga, and cessation, that they're sort of necessary. Once you feel full, you're ready to experience the fullness of emptiness. Because otherwise, if you just jump into an emptiness practice and see lack, people freak out because they don't have the basis of fullness. And so the Buddha wanted people to start with fullness before they work. And you can even start seeing what's missing in each jhana, because you can go through the jhanas by removing things that are too rough or too impermanent. And you start removing things. So it's like we had this game when I was a kid of we'd stick sticks through this thing and you'd start pulling, you'd put balls up there and you'd pull them out, and you try and find how few sticks you can to hold the balls up there. And the jhana practice is kind of like that. You're kind of holding experience. You start pulling out the supports. You think thinking is so important, but in the first jhana, you learn that you don't need the gross thinking of the hindrances at all, that you can live a life just fine without them, except for the survival layer of them. And then you can even find it a deeper first jhana. You can get so refined you don't even need gross thinking. Oh, I'm so happy I have no jhanas. That thought might not even occur to you. You get deeper and deeper into the first jhana, and then you can even let go of thinking and evaluating in the second jhana. You can even let go of thought and just experience silence and in fullness of joy. And so you start removing these pieces, and you can even let go of rapture. You can separate it out from happiness in the third jhana. You can even let go of happiness in the fourth jhana and just experience equanimity and purity of light. And that's it. Those are the jhanas. But it's just taking the pieces apart slowly.
To get to the point where you don't actually need to meditate, like you can just access it at any
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
Once it's developed, it's always there.
That's a
whenever
sign
you
of
want.
mastery.
And I think in the sutras, there's an example where Sariputta his disciple says, so there are 7 factors of enlightenment, and rapture is one of it. And he says that how rapture should be developed to the point is like a king when he wants to wear the blue jacket or the red jacket or the orange jacket in the morning, he chooses, right? So in the morning, he would choose the orange jacket. And then during lunchtime, he would be like, okay, I want to use the green jacket. So, like that, he says the 7 factors of enlightenment, you should be skilled whenever you decide, oh, in this hour, I'm going to sit here and develop my rapture in the body. And you should be able to do that. And then all the other 7 also, you do that. But rapture is coming from your first jhana. So if you have developed your jhana, first jhana properly, you have the skill of developing rapture the moment you want. And having that is actually a good thing for your meditation, because you can't ever say then you're tired or sleepy, because you know the switch. If you're lacking energy, you turn on the rapture and energize your body, and then you continue with your practice.
And it's also that rapture is number 4 in the 7, and so it's right in the middle. That the word is piti that the Buddha is using. You can translate it as rapture, like we said, or joy, or anything, but it's right in the center. And what precedes it, you also master those before you can even experience that, is moment to moment mindfulness, sort of. And then once you start being mindful, living a mindful life, making it your livelihood, your resort, you're always mindful, you have that awareness going, and you remember things, and you're like, you can go back at times when the clay pots do fall apart in life, and go, oh, what did I input back here in the causes and how it ended up here, and you can start investigating. And from that investigation, you can build more. It's energizing because you see, oh, this stuff really works. I'm making my life, I'm making better pots. And so it builds more energy to do more pot making or whatever, and build more happiness and build more peace and love into your life. And then that piti is kind of built off of those pieces as well. And that piti then leads to calm. The Buddha didn't say just, oh, be calm. He said, no, develop these things, these higher forms of energy, then let go into calm. Because if you go into calm too quickly, you might find yourself craving rapture, really these heightened state, or fall asleep. That's a good point. That you do need to constantly balance the two, calm and piti, for a while before you can really develop them. And yeah, and then develop samadhi, and then develop, equanimity.
Another point where you would have felt rapture is when people are talking about Dhamma, and if you're listening to Dhamma or listening to chantings, suddenly this momentary rapture comes in. Like, those are some examples for rapture if somebody wants to understand it.
Kanika, we call it. Yeah, it's like a flash of
Yeah.
You can get
Goosebumps.
Thank you. I thought of the word. So you can feel a rush up the spine. You can feel like a shower coming through you. It can come very quickly, as well. And those things can usually just be ignored. They're usually too quick to really work them and develop them. Just try and see what gave rise to them and keep giving rise to them until they sort of connect into more continuous experience.
Any more questions? One good thing about the rapture is this is towards the end part of the developing the rapture is like, so if you have played with the rapture, one of my friends was saying he was in a board meeting and he was just developing rapture in his body while in the meeting. So he was being more mindful and more focused at the same time. And what you would see if you get to that habit of developing rapture, when the rapture is in your entire body field, you can now slowly look at what the mind state is. Where is it settling?
Right.
What are the characteristics of this state of mind? Is it calm? Is there thoughts there? Is it emptiness? So you would find there's a certain mind, mind, I would say a level of mind that needs to be there with rapture. So by developing rapture, you get to that mind level, or you develop the mind level and the rapture comes there. So both ways you can get into first chakra.
I have a comment. Robert mentioned magic.
Mhm.
There is an element. That's something that helps you, right? If I understand.
Access and understanding of these energies. Yeah.
For me, that really resonates, except for I sort of don't even think about it as magic in the sense that we almost, because in our culture, and talking about culture, um, we believe in matter. That's matter is just absolutely undisputable fact, which it's not, but it's so for me, this magic is essentially when I feel it in my meditations and but I think of it more as not as magic, but as true reality. Something that we do not understand with our mind, human mind, that's beyond mind, that and that's what we, because we don't understand and call it magic. And there's just so much that we don't know with our sort of intellectual minds. And so for me, that sort of this sort of way of I don't know, thinking or not, it's not even, it's beyond thinking.
My friend used to
And
call
I
it,
think that I feel it and I am, and that's when there's joy, the PT is so bright, so
Mhm.
that
The mystery.
it's not even a mystery anymore.
Mm.
It's so real.
Mhm.
I had a good friend in DC. He was like he owns his own company, but he would listen to my meditation talks, but he doesn't talk because he doesn't meditate. But he would call it my la la land thinking. But it's true for you. If you're feeling it, if you're being aware of it, it's true for you, right? So that's what matters.
Yeah.
But it's just
Yeah. I also just want you to tune in to solutions that can come from tuning into the field of and that's what I meant by magic, that if you try and build wisdom into your life or build compassion or construct things, but sometimes just tuning into to the field will just present the solution you need for you, and trusting, really being in the field and trusting people's voices. Like suddenly I would, someone would say something that it was practicing, and someone would just say something out of the blue that would suddenly just in a sentence help me understand something and get me past an obstacle in my meditation practice, or point me to something, and just tuning into serendipity.
It's a recognition of
That,
something
yeah.
that you already know
Mm-hmm.
it's there,
Mm-hmm.
and you just saw it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That, yeah.
Intuition is a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
is that, yeah, no,
Wisdom.
intuition is different, so
Like the word prajna is what Buddha uses. It's like, so sila, samadhi, prajna. So with discipline, you have samadhi. With samadhi comes wisdom, the prajna part. It's the knowing.
to know, right?
It also reminds me of like the childlike wonder, that we get kind of conditioned out of, but I feel like is like a key characteristic of enlightened people is there's this like childlike quality, almost like a beginner's mind. And I associate that with like magical thinking or you're just not, you don't know that you know that you don't know. And you're in that place of like childlike wonder and openness and beginner's mind that, in my experience, leads to that joy and that openness and wonder. And yeah.
On that point, I think it's important not to paint whatever we're feeling in this practice over. John Jeff used to say, don't paint an unripe mango red. Like if you have a green mango, or you come into your meditation practice and you have a green mango, don't pretend to yourself you're feeling pity. Work with the unripe parts and let them mature on their own time. It's a sort of patience practice. But we tend to do that, right, with joy because we're so trained. I'm sad, let me go watch a funny movie. We paint over our experience. Our relationship to joy is a kind of covering up of a sadness underneath. But this is, yeah, an innocent encounter, and as the purity of whatever you're feeling and the perfection of the sadness, the perfection of you right now, and uncovering the joy within that. It's really entering into that and letting it mature. It's not an artificial maturation of our practice. We're not accelerating it. We're uncovering it. If that it's just a different way of saying what you said, but yeah.
There was a question.
Bennett.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm taking a lot in, but I just I was noticing part of the magic and the innocence and all that. I noticed I'll be a little transparent. That's why I love being in communities, right? But I've been working with loneliness.
Mm.
And it was really interesting as I was fully feeling the presence, just noticing a part of me was feeling this way. So because I love to meditate and love to be in this, I'm kind of being drawn to spend more time with people who are meditating. And so some of my old friends are not into that. So it's kind of like a switch. But to the point is, I've noticed it's really interesting. You were mentioning, Robert, about beings, but it was really fun. It's like a playful thing. I just started to recognize I was in the fullness of this. And I just felt that I'm going to use the word Christ, or I even have Sophia here and Buddha here, and Krishna back here. And I felt like I was just with all these beings.
Perfect.
And it was just, I mean, right now I can feel it. It's just like, and then I felt the feelings, the interconnectedness of things, and just felt like I was being held. And every feeling was being like I was touched and cared for. It's like back in the womb, just being an innocent baby. And just being like tenderly held and loved and seen and felt. And I guess I was by myself, but I was feeling like that I was being with other people, literally. And I know that because in fact that the mind can't tell the difference anyway, because it's all mind anyway. But the fact of the matter is really amazing. And it's just by meditating on that, being surrounded by beings, just as if I'm surrounded by you here, which are kind of, we all are kind of manifestations of the same. But it's just, it really taught me a lot that actually never alone.
Yeah. And then
You can't do it, actually.
something very important with the first jhana is, so when you get into the first jhana, you're not thinking about the outside world, right? So the outside world is perceived through the senses, the five senses, the eyes, nose, ears, the touch. So one of the descriptions of the first jhana from Buddha is when these five sensual codes or the inputs are cut off and you're not thinking along those lines, you're limiting your awareness to your body. That's one of the characteristics of the first jhana. But with that, cutting off that outside world sometimes gives us this fear of loneliness. Sometimes we think it's lonely, but what I did was it was more like wordplay. It was actually aloneness. Without saying it loneliness, I started embracing my alone time. And I enjoyed my alone time more with myself. So when you get into the first jhana, sometimes some people might have these this feeling of being alone, because why it's happening is you're not thinking of the outside world. You're not letting your mind go out from you,
Outside the box.
outside the box,
Mhm.
outside the body. So you have to now learn to embrace your aloneness yourself now to start getting into the first jhana. So that's a very good point.
It's excellent. Yeah. How the two are so connected. Yeah. That's very good. It first jhana will heal that sense of loneliness and solitude. The rupa body is an intimately connected body with all things. You
And
will feel that more and more. It will deepen more and more. And you're just working with fragments where you think that's still not true in the first jhana. And all the sub layers of the first jhana and all the really are just refining that rupa sense, that sense of oneness and connection deeper and deeper.
And I think we should replace that word with aloneness, which is a much better word than loneliness.
All one. All
Aloneness.
all one. ALONE.
It's just all.
All.
Allness.
Yeah.
And I've heard this phrase, and you may have too, that the world is our body. Our body is the entire essence of self-healing. There's no borders. Robert mentioned the dissolution of it. For me, it feels like more dissolution in a sense that there's no borders, and so it's almost expansion. And there's that alone, but not really. It's more that fall.
So I'm starting to sense into people's bodies getting tight and contracted, and we've been indulging a lot of listening and talking. And what I really want to do is some movement practice alone, all one, or and maybe and then we'll break. And you can do some yoga, some cat cows, do back and forth walking meditation, and we'll ring a bell when lunch is ready. Does that sound good to everyone? And just some quiet time now. Does that sound good? Yeah. So we're always around to answer more questions and to have more conversations about this. And it was very exciting. And thank you for those of you who shared today and asked questions, and appreciate all that.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Chamal.